The mind in the dark. We often think fear comes from what we can see, a shadow in the corner, a sound in the hallway, the presence of something we can name, point to, and run from. But the most powerful fear doesn't come from what we see. It comes from what we can't. Darkness removes all boundaries. It strips away certainty. When we can't see, our mind fills the void with imagination, and imagination, untethered from reality, is far more terrifying than anything real. In the 1960s, researchers began a series of experiments in sensory deprivation. Volunteers were placed in dark, silent rooms for long periods, sometimes hours, sometimes days. There was no sound, no light, no motion, just the soft hum of their own heartbeat. At first, most reported boredom, a dull stillness, but soon the silence began to move. They started to hear things that weren't there, faint whispers, distant footsteps, the echo of breathing that didn't belong to them. Faces appeared in the dark, shapes formed in the blackness, moving where nothing could move. Their brains, deprived of sensory input, began to create their own stimuli. It wasn't madness, it was adaptation. The mind is a prediction machine built to make sense of the world. When it's denied data, it doesn't stop working. It invents. One volunteer described feeling a cold hand brush her cheek, though she was alone in the chamber. Another swore he saw a face staring at him in the dark, hovering inches away. None of it was real, yet every nerve screamed that it was. What they discovered was unsettling. Fear didn't need a threat. It needed only the absence of certainty. This experiment revealed something fundamental about human consciousness. Our perception isn't just about taking in the world, it's about constructing it. When the construction materials are removed, the mind starts building out of shadows. That's why fear of the dark is so universal. It's not about the dark itself, but about the infinite possibilities it hides. In that space, every sound could be danger, every shape could be a predator, every silence could be the pause before something arrives. And this raises a haunting question. If our fears are born inside us, does the world outside even need to be frightening? Maybe the monsters we dread don't live in the woods or under our beds. Maybe they live in the folds of our imagination, waiting for the lights to go out. From the darkness of the mind, let's move to the chill of the body, where fear takes physical form. The cold hint of terror. Fear doesn't live only in the mind. It lives in the body, in the quickening pulse, the tightening chest, the dry mouth, the trembling hands. It is ancient, automatic, and deeply physical. Every emotion passes through the flesh, but fear transforms it. It sharpens, contracts, electrifies. In one experiment, psychologists asked volunteers to submerge their hands into ice-cold water. Their heart rate spiked, muscles clenched, breathing grew shallow. It was painful, but manageable. Then, without warning, the experimenters told them that at any moment they might receive a mild electric shock. Though no shock would actually come, the reaction was immediate. Heartbeats accelerated beyond the levels caused by cold. Sweat appeared on their skin. Some began to shiver, not from temperature, but from terror. The anticipation of pain was more powerful than pain itself. This was the lesson. The body can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined when fear is involved. When the brain whispers danger, the body obeys, whether the threat exists or not. The stress hormones surge, blood flow changes, muscles tighten in preparation to flee or fight. Adrenaline floods the bloodstream. The body becomes a living alarm. And even if nothing happens, the alarm keeps ringing. That's what makes fear so efficient. It's not about truth, it's about survival. Evolution didn't build us to wait for confirmation. It built us to assume the worst and react instantly. The ones who hesitated didn't make it. But that ancient wiring, so useful in the wild, betrays us in modern life. The mind imagines, the body believes. You can lie safely in bed and still feel your heart pounding as if a predator were inches away. You can watch a movie or hear a story or think a thought, and the body trembles at phantoms. It's as if fear rehearses our suffering before it happens, a cruel training for threats that may never arrive. Our muscles remember danger that never existed. Our hearts race at ghosts. We are haunted not by reality, but by expectation. And yet, this reaction keeps us alive. It's a paradox we can't escape. Fear is both the warning and the wound. Our biology protects us, even if it means making us miserable. If the body can be tricked by fear, what happens when fear itself becomes the trick, not to protect us, but to control us? The obedience of fear. Sometimes fear doesn't make us run, it makes us obey. When fear meets authority, it can transform ordinary people into instruments of cruelty. In the 1960s, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted one of the most disturbing experiments in history. Volunteers were told they were helping test a learning program. They were instructed to administer electric shocks to another person, the learner, every time they answered a question incorrectly. The shocks increased with each mistake. The learner, though an actor, pretended to scream in agony. The real subject, sitting behind a control panel, could hear every cry. When some hesitated, the experimenter, a calm man in a white lab coat, would say, "The experiment requires that you continue." And most did. They pressed the switch again and again. Over 60% went all the way to what they believed were deadly shocks. They weren't sadists. They weren't monsters. They were ordinary people, teachers, clerks, parents, doing what they were told. Their fear wasn't of the shocks or of guilt, but of defying authority, of breaking the invisible rule that says, obey those in charge. Fear of consequence overpowered compassion. Milgram's experiment showed something chilling about human nature. We often think evil comes from malice, but more often, it comes from fear. Fear of standing alone, of disobedience, of punishment. Fear turns morality into obedience and empathy into silence. History is filled with this kind of fear. Soldiers following unjust orders, neighbors turning away from cruelty, entire societies moving in lockstep because everyone is too afraid to say no. Fear becomes a system, not a feeling. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it doesn't chase, it commands. It tells us that safety lies in obedience, even when obedience leads to harm. And so fear, once meant to protect us, becomes the tool of control. It can make good people commit terrible acts simply because disobedience feels more dangerous than cruelty. It forces us to ask how much of what we do is guided by reason and how much by the quiet, relentless fear of consequence. But fear doesn't only control us from above. Sometimes we invite it ourselves to feel something real, to wake up the body, to remember we are alive. The pleasure of fear. Why do we pay to be scared? Why do we enter haunted houses, watch horror films, and tell ghost stories in the dark? We know fear hurts, yet we seek it out like a thrill, a drug, a strange form of comfort. Psychologists at the University of Wisconsin studied people's brains while they watched horror movies. The results were surprising. The same regions that activate in real fear, the amygdala, the sympathetic nervous system, also lit up, but so did the parts tied to pleasure and reward. The reason is simple: safety. We know we are not in real danger. The fear response activates, but the rational mind reassures us we are okay. This balance creates a chemical cocktail: adrenaline, dopamine, endorphins, that feels exhilarating. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff with a strong railing. Your heart races, but you know you won't fall. That moment, the edge between danger and safety, is addictive. In evolutionary terms, this makes sense. Controlled fear teaches the body to face chaos and survive it. It's a kind of play, a rehearsal for danger without consequence. Every shiver and gasp is the body's reminder you're still here. This explains why children play hide and seek or why roller coasters draw crowds. They simulate fear in a world where true terror is rare. We crave the chemical rush, the clarity of the moment when everything else fades and survival instinct takes over. But there's another layer, a darker one. Fear strips away pretense. It reveals us. When we are scared, masks fall. We remember how fragile we are. And in that vulnerability, there's something almost pure. The same chemicals that surge in fear are close cousins to those that flood us when we fall in love or experience awe. Maybe fear is life's shadow, the contrast that makes joy visible. We chase fear not to suffer, but to feel alive. And yet, when fear crosses the line from thrill to trauma, it stops being a choice. It begins to repeat, to loop, to echo, and the mind can't escape. The echo chamber of fear. Fear doesn't always fade. Sometimes it lingers, replaying endlessly, long after the danger has passed. This is what scientists call conditioned fear. In Pavlov-style experiments, rats were exposed to a sound followed by a mild shock. Before long, the sound alone made them freeze in terror. Even after the shock stopped, the fear didn't. The memory of pain became as real as pain itself. Humans work the same way. A soldier hearing fireworks years after war, a child flinching at raised voices, a driver trembling at intersections after an accident. The mind records fear as a lesson, and the body never forgets. Inside the brain, the amygdala and hippocampus, the centers for emotion and memory, intertwine, locking the association between danger and survival. It's a system meant to protect us, but it doesn't know when to stop. The alarm keeps ringing even when the fire is out. That's why trauma feels eternal. You can be safe, loved, and calm, and still feel the pulse of fear at a harmless trigger. Your mind replays the warning because it once saved you. It believes it's helping, but in doing so, it traps you inside your own protection. Conditioned fear shows how the same mechanism that keeps us alive can also imprison us. Our brains are not storytellers seeking truth. They are guardians seeking safety. They remember every pain so they can prevent it, even if it means reliving it forever. But maybe there's a strange mercy in that. Fear reminds us that we once faced something worth surviving. It's not only a wound, but a monument, proof that we endured. The echo of fear is also the echo of life. And perhaps that's the final lesson. Fear is not the enemy. It's the shadow that proves the light exists. It tells us we've lived through danger, that we're still breathing, still here. So as you close your eyes tonight, remember this. Fear doesn't vanish in the dark. It softens. It hums quietly beneath the calm. It waits not to harm you, but to remind you that even in stillness, you are alive.